Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What a pleasant time with all of you today afternoon. You know, the conversation you heard in the first three panel discussion, the first one was brilliant, the second one was even more brilliant. We equally hope to make this very exciting. It's a good appetite for you before you go for lunch. We are splitting the conversation into threefold. So the first conversation, I want to build it up with Avinash. The question is, year and a half back, perhaps 2 years back, 3 years back, everything said is going to collapse if you didn't adopt AI as a model. Whether it's variation, formation, as Gen AI, agentic AI, everything all taking shape. Fundamentally, 18 months back, 24 months back, for enterprises, the strategies were completely defined differently. So perhaps to start with Avinash, your perspective, in the last 12 months, the last 18 months, are you seeing a change in strategy, what enterprises felt? What has changed? Where is it getting accelerated? Where is the pedal being applied? And where is the brake being applied?
Great, thank you, ESP. So, to answer the question about the last 12 months, let me go back even further. So I think if you look at it, 25 years ago when this industry really got going in that sense, it was basically how you could do technology 10,000 miles away from the US and the business processes. And a lot of stuff was taken into place. Today we look back and say, yeah, that was easy. But at that time, it was a big technology transformation of getting work done 10,000 miles away. Then go back to 2010, you had the digital stuff come in. And if you remember, every company out there had a digital, they had McKinsey Digital, Accenture Digital, you name it, TCS Digital, everyone had digital. But today, digital is part of everyone. But when the digital was there, everyone executed very differently. There were significant learnings from it. One of the things was that digital, anything that you implement has to be given a lot of focus. And if you just say, well, it is just part of what we have today, then nothing changes, by the way. I think one thing we learned from the digital stuff was reinvention, not transformation. So I think the one thing that I would like to say is that for the AI stuff, this is not an option for people. So 25 years ago, it was an option where the people want to offshore. This is not an option. Every company would have to go through this AI reinvention if they have to be successful. So now let's come back to what was there 12 months ago. So 12 months ago, everyone was exploring AI, wanting to figure out what is the potential of AI. And at the most, you would do POCs, proof of concepts. And for example, you would say, how can I automate customer support, by the way? So that was a proof of concept. People would actually look at it and say, well, I'm going to experiment this and experiment that. I think what has happened now is all of that stuff has changed now. Now the discussion is definitely in the boardrooms, and it's part of strategy, where they're saying we have to make the AI investment. We have to make AI be part of our strategy. We have to put it into our core processes. So for example, when we look at data and AI-based decision making to kind of see as to what the supply chain should look like, when we want to use AI and data in terms of seeing as to what the financial forecasting should be, not just for the, for the Wall Street, but financial forecasting for the business, for everything. It is being done today. Not the fact it will be done, it is being done today, by the way. So we are seeing a significant application of AI, which is being in strategy and being in core processes, by the way. And so that's a very, very big change that has happened over the last 12 months. I would like to actually also talk a little bit about how enterprises are doing it today. See, the thing is that everyone looks at, when we were before the digital stuff or before the SaaS stuff, everyone looked at as a service, as a solution. SaaS basically was a platform that people can just use and pay for it as well and tap into it. Now with the AI, part of it is services, part of it is a platform. And I think this combination stuff, I think the best way to look at it is as AI managed services. Okay, what does that mean? What that basically means is that there is definitely an outcome. The managed services gives you an outcome at a certain price. Now, how do you come to an outcome at a certain price? You basically look at what you want to achieve, find an AI solution that can make it happen, find out what are the inputs to it. So you get the inputs, the data basically, and today the good thing is that the data could be in Excel, the data could be in different ERPs. It's so easy to put all of that data into one. You take the data, figure out some configuration workflows, not customization, configuration, apply the AI solution, comes the output, you can easily dashboard it interactively in real time, plus all the insights that are there for the outcome, and there is a price to it. Now this is something that is very consumable. Any organization, any enterprise can actually look at it and consume that stuff. So especially in this room, we have a lot of people from GCCs, a lot of people from IT companies, and the thing is that how do GCCs scale AI, and how do the enterprises actually help scale AI? And I think that's a great model for AI managed services.
Just building on what Avinash said, 12 months strategy is not change per se, but operational model of to execute it faster is what rethinking is going on. If I were to look at you, Kalpana, in the past we said, let's perhaps start with operational efficiencies. Then perhaps it said focus on customer experiences. Then people focus, the first panel also discussed about people, process, technology. In your opinion, if you had to wear an alternate lens and looking at how is the strategy change, where is it changing? Is it on an autonomous systems? Is it an efficiencies? Is it an experience? Where else is the strategy which has changed in the last 12 months?
So first off, thanks for having me here, KSV and Samir. And from a last 12 months perspective, I think if you look at where is the change happening, I think people think of, let's say, AI as a separate, engine running and the business as a separate engine running. And how can I make maybe the engine of business better with, maybe putting a fuel of AI? I think presently what is changing is, how can I change my business model using AI, and what will actually change in the business, because of AI? I think we should not restrict ourselves to saying, okay, I have Google Maps, I have X train, I make it faster, I make the map faster. I think the idea is to see whether why should I travel, what can be done differently. So I think we have to maybe, progress in the next 12 months to look at a dominant design of AI. Presently, I think different people are using AI for efficiencies, like marketeers. Healthcare professionals are using it, let's say, for patient notes or looking at how can I serve patients better. So each person is actually looking at the existing process and attaching AI into it, similar to probably an ERP. But I would think that, like how electricity transformed to, recoat Sundar Pichai, I think we'll need to reimagine what is business, and that is underway presently.
Just one before I proceed further. How many of you in this room are representing the GCC world? Good plumbers. Let me start that question to you, to Sreekant, to begin with. Many things which India did very well in the technology world was led by the service providers, right? They got us into the map, what we are today, etc. In the GCC world, are we there in that aha moment to pick up the stick and say, we will dribble and run, discover the AI solution with the enterprise? Or are we still waiting to be told, look, what needs to be done? Where are we on that?
Thanks for having me. And so I represent the government side of things, and we've been looking at how can we support GCCs that are coming into India, coming into Hyderabad. The questions that we keep getting are, what is it that we can support the GCCs per se and enterprises and the innovation hubs that we have as well, in terms of how can we look at AI to solve for problems that are existing. They're also coming to us and saying, are there any unique things that you and the government are doing to help us facilitate some of the changes that are happening? So a combination of support to the GCCs and also to the enterprises that are there, that are coming about from the government side of things. In addition to that, what we are also seeing is the question that we're getting asked is, do I have the right talent? In the sense, like when GCCs are coming and they're saying, we want to solve for this problem, the question that keep coming back to is like, do you, the city or the state or whichever place that you're looking at, do you have the right talent to be able to solve for the problem that we're going after? And that's a lens that we're looking at in a very careful way, because the number of ML engineers or AI engineers that we require, we don't necessarily have them already and available. So we're trying to figure out how do we put that lens in terms of saying what is the skilling, upskilling, retooling that might be required as the need for, if you will, as Avinash was mentioning and as Kalpana was mentioning, for AI becoming real and more integrated into operations, into businesses going on. How do we make sure that you have the right amount of talent that's available is how we are looking at things.
The reason I was asking you is, again, I'm trying to build India as an AI aha moment, right? If I have an experience to latch on to, as perhaps in the Y2K moment, where the entire ecosystem collaborated together to create India the tech map for the world, for the global world now. Now, starting with you, Balaji, from the AI world, even from a GCC lens or the service provider lens, agentic AI, or say even Gen AI perspective, from an enterprise's perspective, which you represent an enterprise in India, what are the kind of ecosystem that is getting generated? Should we be creating to create that moment so that, just as a comparison, if we could have a DeepSeek moment recently, that when it comes to GCCs and in AI and agentic AI and the solutions and the products and the platform, this is our moment. What is that kind of moment that we should create? What kind of ecosystem is required for that?
Sure. Yeah, good afternoon. I hope you are able to hear me. So, first thing I'll answer the aha moment, then come to the ecosystem. The aha moment, like just my humble opinion, is the agentic AI for the GCCs. Because that's where we can automate workflow. That's where our strengths lie. Like similar to how we transitioned in intelligent automation or robotic process automation, agentic AI is our strength where we can definitely contribute and create an aha moment across the GCCs. And also to the services company. That's our aha moment, just in my humble opinion. Coming to the ecosystem, I think when we think of ecosystem, the first player that comes to our mind is Apple. Like they have created multi-billion-dollar ecosystem having a seamless, say, hardware-software combination. So when it comes to AI, like a few things I would like to touch on. First is the technology. Like we always start with technology. Like when we start an ecosystem, if you look at what phase we are in currently, like we are trying to get the technology in place, like say, adapt the tools, like do automation, legacy modernization using technology. So that's where we have started. That's the current moment. And eventually we'll move to business outcomes, like where we try to get the ecosystem around where not only technology, say operations and other groups in the company start participating in that. And for this ecosystem to work, like we need, we should have the ability to scale. So we need to get the infrastructure in place, a strategy in place for the organization infrastructure so we can scale. So it's technology, getting the operations and business into place, then getting the infrastructure in place. But primarily on top of all these things, we need to have a global risk and compliance management because that's very critical for AI. So the organization needs to build a bubble of GRC on top so that we take care of the risk and compliance and also governance in place so that like we take care of the ecosystem well.
I agree with you. I agree with what you're saying, what we need to be in place. Question today is from an ecosystem play perspective, right? He did talk about academia playing a role to build what is required. Perhaps we have lots of startup here, they could perhaps play a role in what is going on. Perhaps you have a service provider in the morning, Sanjeev of Sapient talked about, don't get into what is holding, etc. So in that context, I'm saying perhaps you could give a thought, and Kalpana, you may like to add and said, what will be those ecosystem moments that we need to build for us to get that we have the story of AI from India?
Yeah, and the last part of the puzzle I'll go back is like where we start delivering to customers on the ecosystem. I talked about technology, operations, business, and the governance around it. Then we need to have, like similar to how Apple did it with API, the marketplace, the Apple store. I think once we start building agents and once we start exposing like the API marketplace, the agent marketplace to customer, that's when the ecosystem gets published to, say, the business.
It's a good point you're making. You're saying, I'll come to Kalpana. The good point you said, the way Apple created an ecosystem, perhaps it's good for India, with we being the strongest in GCC ecosystem, we being the strongest technology ecosystem, identify that ecosystem that is required build capabilities around that, could be startup, put together, that ecosystem creation play will be very important. Yeah, Kalpana, your thoughts?
Right.
And, Avinash, your thoughts on
So I think another important component will be the talent or the people. While, maybe AI is a mechanism or a technology, I feel that there are different roles, just like how you have a hero, heroine, villain, director and, assistant director. I would say you should have somebody who's a creator, somebody who's a consumer, somebody who's a collaborator, somebody who's a compliance, watchdog, if I may use the word, and orchestrator like a government to see whether, okay, are somebody getting
in the moment of film, let's call script writer.
Yeah, I mean, I would say government should not be script writer. Government, in my view, should be more like maybe a prompter in a play. Because the people know what's happening. There is a, public and then there is a private. I'm talking about more the private. I think the prompters thing is that somebody else should not speak. For example, the hero cannot become a villain on the stage and then start to become like Terminator 2 or Terminator 1, Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? So essentially, I think there are different roles that different people play. Presently, I think the moment is there where we are consuming AI a lot. We are not bothering about how is it getting created, whether if DeepSeek comes. I mean, my dad is 88 years old. Even for questions like Vastu or where should I keep the, maybe the Swami in the puja room. Nowadays, he's now only asking DeepSeek or ChatGPT, and then he does a healthy competition between ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek, and now Grok 3. He told me today that I tried Grok 3. There are some things that it's not doing all right. So the consumers are becoming very, very active, while probably the collaborators. I would say that we are all collaborators because we are collaborating either within the enterprise, outside the enterprise, to go and deliver to an internal or an external customer. And the creator, I think the creator is where I would really request all the leaders to play, like a real stewardship role where you provide youngsters the role of maybe a seat in your, cohort. Don't worry about, having experience because the last 20 years of experience doesn't matter.
Absolutely right.
So you should have actually somebody who is a youngster in your team. If at all one thing I want somebody to take away, I would say that put a two-year just out of college person in your team and then see the magic happen.
So
of course,
essentially you're saying all the people present in this room, they can contact you after this meeting is over and you will give an idea. We all can perform an idea to say that unless we get the ecosystem in play, the moment will be lost.
Yeah.
Exactly the way what we did for technology services, we could perhaps do that. We will do it.
Yes.
Avinash, your comment.
I think very right, and I want to take on your point, Kalpana. Very, very important. And I think it's very, very difficult for us in India to really understand what you said, okay? The thing is that the AI stuff actually gives us unimaginable possibilities. So the competition will be seeing as to how far we can reimagine and extend the possible in terms of the consumer experience. And I think India has traditionally been a very technical, tell me what to do and I'll do it for you. And I think this is something which is the biggest baggage that we can have in this AI age.
Our own success.
Yeah. And I think, so what we need to do, and especially if you look at some of the large multinational companies who are in this business of consulting and other things, I guess my previous alma mater, for example, for the last 10, 15 years, they've been making acquisitions of media companies, billions of dollars, by the way. Why? Because you cannot really implement AI, you cannot deliver value till you reimagine the experience with it, by the way, fine? And the whole idea is to, say to let's say a client, come in a studio, just dream. He says, what do you mean by dream? I can't just dream anything. It's not implementable. I said, no, don't be constrained by what is implementable. Just dream. And eventually when you dream, the impossible, as the media guys on the billboards will have a man flying and all the stuff, I think then you go out and see what other opportunities are available, what innovation is there, what AI can do to make it happen, by the way. Fine. And you come back And in most cases, the client is awed. It's like, wow, is it possible? Yes. And that's what you're creating. So I think the number one thing today is to reimagine the consumer experience, and that can only be done by creative talent. So unless and until we bring in an ecosystem of creative talent, we will be very shackled in terms of delivering value on the AI stuff.
Before I go to my next question, I want to throw up option to anybody wanting a question to these people. Any questions? Okay, perhaps we're waiting for the third question from my side to you before the answer bomb. You know, in the past, we are generally, all of us as human beings are very good in doing post-mortem. Post-mortem, why things work, why didn't things work. Avinash, starting with you, if you were ahead to do a pre-mortem in 36 months from now, when the AI project which the customer takes off doesn't take off, what are the 3-4 things they should have perhaps be thinking about it now to make it successful so that the post-mortem situation doesn't come?
So KSV, I didn't tell you that in the room, speakers, but I was saying this is probably the toughest question for me to ask, and hopefully KSV doesn't ask me to do that. And in the room he said, we will ask you that question. And I said, okay, fine. So,
just as a background, it's in 1980 IIT Kanpur. So he has done lots of post-mortem in all his professional life in the last 40 years now.
No, I definitely have been in this industry from when this industry was being born. I was part of creating this industry. I've seen lots of things, by the way, so yes. So I think if you were to look at, let's say a few years down the road and say what I should not have done or what I should have done, by the way. Okay, so think it that way. I think anytime anything would fail a few years down the road, what are the things that I said I should have done? Number one, really speaking, AI has been so phenomenal that why did we constrain our thinking to be very limited? We should have imagined a lot more. So again, it's going back to the previous stuff that I had talked, but that probably will be the number one thing that I would say. Because the competition and whoever has been successful has not been shackled by that. They have really tried to extend it. And it's not a one-time exercise, it's a continuous exercise. That's one thing. The second thing I said, I did not pay enough attention to the data that could be collected. And the fact is that, you say, well, the data is all over the place. The thing is that unless and until you get data from everywhere, and especially with this agentic, agents, for example, it's not just one, it's multiple functions and everything. And the value would be multiplied if you basically do agentic agents which are multi-process, multi-function, and all of that stuff, by the way. So the thing is that the amount of processing that's required is enormous, but you need the data to be able to process it. So I think the competition will try to see as to how far they can go there. So the thing is that if we did not pay attention to the data, I would say, wish I did. And then I guess the analytics models, by the way. So I know we're sitting in a conference over here about analytics and AI, and it's very, very appropriate. I think each and every one of you who's an analytics leader in this room has a very, very big responsibility, because you are the ones that are going to give a lot of insights on the consumer experience, on what the consumer wants, not today, even predicting what they would want there. So I think the analytics stuff would also be something very, very important. And also the talent requirement that we have, I think we need to predict what the talent requirement is to keep pace with the AI and start building that talent today.
Yeah, I need I'll come back to you, Sreekant. I'll just take Balaji's point. Your viewpoint.
Yeah,
don't answer, don't respond to what he says, right?
No, adding 2 points to what he said.
You can add it more. You can build up what is your pre-mortem analysis or what could have been done differently.
Yeah, 2 points I want to add again, like complementary to what he said.
Oh,
so
gosh,
one is we are looking at it more as at the hindsight, after like pre-mortem, we'll see we are looking more as a technology problem. Like say AI, like we are not looking at a business outcome.
Correct.
Say this could have solved a consumer operations issue, or it could have helped solve disputes quicker. Whereas we are trying to generate code, we are trying to see how quickly we can do things. So that is where I think one pre-mortem I can think of. The second one I want to highlight based on past experience is the cost. I think like we didn't plan for the cost ahead or how we can scale. We have seen this in mainframes. We have seen this in cloud. like in the past, like where cost went, we were scrambling later once we implemented how to control the cost. It happened in both the era, mainframes era and currently in the cloud era also, we are struggling. Once we scale, the cost goes up. Then after that, we look at how we can bring the cost down. So that cost benefit analysis is another area which we could have thought earlier, but we'll know only at hindsight. So these are two things I can think of.
Both great points. I should have made you make the point earlier itself. Kalpana.
Right. I have 3 points to say. One is more a macro point. The first thing is, I think whenever we are on the cusp of large kind of transformation for humanity, we need to be careful about what we do with power. So, like to recall what Abe Lincoln said about giving a person a power and seeing. So, I think it's important to make sure that we have balance, and balance defined in whichever way, whether government, public, whether corporation, within a corporation, certain sets of people, within a technology, certain types of technology, etc. So I think that's my first macro point on pre-mortem. The second one would be value. Always look for value. Don't look for, like, okay, now agentic AI is really glitzy. I need to now, make sure that whatever is happening is fine, and therefore I will adopt agentic AI, and I don't know what is business value. I think business value precedes everything else from an enterprise construct. So I think that's my second pre-mortem, if you ask me. The third one is for individuals themselves. Roughly, if you look at the level of learning of AI, it's going to become probably more and more difficult for people to determine where to use their nature from a point of view of neurological advantages like brain, and how do I repurpose and rethink and exercise my brain, so to speak. I'd like to draw a parallel with the pandemic, and probably Swiggy is doing great. Yes, the shares are doing great. Yes, but there is a lot of adverse problems with Swiggy that if you want to make French fries at home and you will eat only this much. But if you want to eat at 2 a.m. French fries, you will eat how much ever, and somebody is actually going to drop it off to you. So be mindful that, that as a consumer, be careful what you're shown as AI. There's a lot of AI whitewashing going on. And therefore, everything that you see in AI is not the truth. And therefore, as a consumer, we need to be careful and pre-mortem that much in advance.
Sreekant, your comments.
So, one quick angle to this is, as we're thinking about, we all know this, the pace of technology change in AI is much more rapid than anything that we have seen. Given that, and given all of us, bunch of GCCs in the room, and what we all are out call ourselves as technologists in some ways, the challenge that I find is intersection of technology skills is one part, but combining that with functional skills or cross collaboration, cross functional skills is a key one that is required in the next 2-3 years. So much so that I keep thinking about what should school children be learning, let's say 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line. I have a son in high school, and I'm worried about what should he be studying. And the pace of change of technology, like software coding is moot at this point. So having skills which are much more broader rounded is going to be important for the kids, but for people who are working, and if you think about pre-mortem, having employees, having leaders who can understand not just the technology aspect of it, but are able to combine with business aspect of it to be able to drive value, as Kalpana was mentioning, as Avinash was mentioning, is going to be a key one for us as we think about what should we be prepared for as we think about the next way.
The last question, I'm going to start with you, Sreekant. That is, okay, fine, AI is for real. Okay, fine, it'll be put in for both operational as well as customer experiences. Okay, fine, we have done pre-mortem, things are going fine. How are you going to build responsibility along with business?
And this is something that only the government can start in some ways in this discussion.
No, I don't think so.
But
government
yeah,
alone cannot do.
No, I absolutely agree. But then all of us are very, very excited about AI, right? We all have seen what it can bring and what values it can bring. But if you think about the orthogonal between consumer privacy versus data, that's coming into fore if you think about GDPR, CCPA, and all of the regulatory acts that are happening in the US and in Europe. That wave has started. And now with AI, that's getting much and more important, much more exploded. And that's clearly there is a gap between what I'd say platform companies, my previous company being one of them, are thinking about what is important versus what the people want, as well as what people are ready to do to provide data in some ways. Like if you talk to any Gen Zer, he doesn't really care about his personal data being shared, but as an adult, as a responsible adult, I feel important, and somebody has to put some guardrails around it. So there's nothing clearly mandated at this point, but at least in Telangana government, we've been actively working. We have an AI policy that we have framed over the past, I'd say, 1 year across various pillars, and responsible or ethical AI is one of them that we are very actively looking at, primarily because the key underlying foundation of data is, of AI is going to be data, and the government has the biggest amounts of data, so we're trying to make sure that there is non-biased data, because that's an important aspect of how you think about caste, gender, rural, urban, and all of that bits. That's an important area that we're looking at, and we're also looking at implementing AI in terms of different elements. Like think of it agriculture use cases, think of it as in industrial use cases, or in power and all of that, and how are we making sure that there is no there's no ambiguity in the outcomes that come about, and that's something that we've been very actively looking at. So we have listed out at least 5-7 different ethical areas that we want to focus on, not necessarily as a policy yet, but that's something that we are pushing towards. For an enterprise which is a private, it's going to be different in terms of what are the various ways that you want to think about ethical uses of AI, but some of the things that we have seen picking up from the EU that has started doing an ethical library of use cases of what they want to implement. We're working with them, also with some of the work that's being done in Saudi Arabia and then in the UN. So those are the things that we're looking at from an ethical use.
No, I'm just seeing a person from behind telling me close. That's the reason, okay? You know, just to, thank you so much. This is useful. There's 2 conclusions I draw, or 3 conclusions I draw. I think the point with Balaji brought out that ecosystem play, which is very, very important. We have a model that was worked with, say, the semiconductor industry in India. We have a model that worked out, say, with Apple as a company in India, but the tech ecosystem of the country. Perhaps study the model of the ecosystem could play. Many people in this room, many people outside the room could perhaps join together to create that magic moment for his one. And second thing that Kalpana, that she talked about, you know, identifying the use cases first, and perhaps deploying technology to that would create that magic that is required, rather than creating the technology and discovering where that could be utilized. The second one, what I heard. Third, that Avinash, that you brought on the table, that in a pre-mortem perspective, the do's and the don'ts, perhaps doing well is important. And lastly, that you talked about, Telangana government has done well a model on building the responsible AI framework that is required, and some of them what could be leverage for us to build an enterprise partnership to make it success. Thank you all. That was what we had for you. Give a big round of applause to my panel today.